So the idea for this video is to talk about some fragrances where I own only one from the house. It's a way to talk about some fragrances that I hadn't addressed before, or to squeeze in ones where I feel like I don't have enough to say about them for an entire video. I think a lot of us kind of collector types end up buying a lot from just a few houses, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I still take the view that I wouldn't buy something from a house I like just because it's from that house. You could say we become biased, giving kind of more time and attention to the houses we like than we do others, but there's just too much out there to like everything, and certainly there's too much to buy everything, and we should be under no obligation to constantly be experimenting and trying. That just kind of feeds the beast in a way. So I think it's good to find those houses which really speak to you to help narrow your focus, but sometimes it's fun to look outside and see what else is going on. So we'll start with the newest ones. One of the reasons I decided to make the video was this new arrival, and it's Rouade from Parfum d'Empire. I had sampled this from a Lucky Scent sample within weeks of it coming out. I've sampled Parfum d'Empire here and there, mostly via Lucky Scent. I've tried the Cri, Wazamba, what's the other one? Corsica Furioso. Some of these I also tried at Scent Bar, where it can be a bit overwhelming to get a good sense of the fragrance. But none of them really spoke to me immediately. But Rouade, when I tried it, I thought this is actually a very nice oud. I'm not the biggest oud fan, but I've been getting more into it lately. And I'm always searching for a really beautiful, natural smelling oud. So I already had a sample of this when it popped up for quite cheap on discounters. I think you can still find it now. So I went for it. I don't think I would have blind bought this, but I already had a sample. I was already familiar with it. And I'm really, really happy. I wore it last night. It is, as the name implies, if you read the brief, very horsey. It focuses on more like the hay and horsey aspects, but also has like a very prominent leather kind of facet to the oud, which makes it different from most of the other ouds I own. It's a little bit skanky at first, but that only lasts a few minutes, and the dry down is really beautiful, and I'm still enjoying it today into the next day. It becomes very, very smooth and very elegant, and I actually find it quite wearable, and even wearable in the heat. It's not overwhelming at all, but very, very well done. I would like to continue to try more from this house. I think they're probably some of the best deals in all of fragrance, but I always worry if that's hurting the bottom line of the creator, that they're so readily available on the cheap. But it's to our benefit, and I've considered buying the Discovery set just to get to know the fragrances here and there, but it's fairly expensive. It might be worth it just given how cheap some of the fragrances can be found on discounters, so that you can get to know them first with the Discovery set, but I just can't bring myself to drop $100. I used to do that more often, and I regretted it so many times, ending up with a big sample set of things I didn't really want to wear or revisit when I could have just bought a perfume. And again, that kind of distracts you. Having so many things to test all the time can kind of distract you from enjoying what you have. But at least this one I can speak for. Fantastic, fantastic oud perfume. On to another recent buy and a recent discovery as far as a house, Ormaie. This is an all-natural house. Apparently been around for a little while. I looked it up and saw that Barney's launched it. I assume this means they launched it in the States back in the day, and Barney's hasn't existed for several years now, so I think that was 2018. But it's an all-natural house, which isn't something I particularly look for, but I'm always willing to try. If it's a good perfume, it's a good perfume. But I recently found a shop here called, I'm actually not sure what it's called. It's Stell, but there's an accent on the E, so I'm not sure if it's Stale or Stelle. But they carry this house, and it's a fantastic shop, by the way. Even in New York, you would think we could access just about everything, but there's several brands I've never seen anywhere else that this shop carries. So I got to try them. They're quite expensive. The full bottles are also really beautiful with artistic caps, but they do sell smaller travel sizes. This one is 28 degrees, which is sort of a summery orange blossom. I somewhat made a mistake in that I had planned to buy Broom, which is a kind of very bright, like bracing, citrusy, green, herbaceous kind of thing. Very kind of lemony, cuts through the heat. But when I revisited Broom no longer spoke to me. I thought maybe it's a little close to Eau de Magnolia, which I already have. And kind of last minute I smelled this and thought, oh, a pretty orange blossom. I got it home and it turns to be quite sweet and vanillic in the dry down. A little bit like, I believe there's a French dessert where they flavor marshmallow with orange flower, orange blossom water. And it reminds me of that. There's been several perfumes that are made on this theme. There's Parle de Moi's Guillaume de Noël, which I've never tried, and one of the Killian ones. I think it's the Love Don't Be Shy, and it kind of goes that direction. Less synthetic and loud than Love Don't Be Shy, but it's one of those where I wish I had tested more thoroughly. I think I'll come to enjoy it, especially in cooler weather, because the sweetness right now is a little much in the heat. But being all natural, it doesn't last particularly long, but it's decent, 4 to 5 hours. But everything smells really great and really kind of refined and smooth and well composed. It doesn't smell kind of artisanal, small batch, all natural. In fact, if it weren't for the kind of lower longevity, I wouldn't necessarily know that these were all natural. And they're also not particularly vintage. I think I'd compare them to Hiram Green in terms of the level of like high quality and refinement they have, but less vintage approach than Hiram Green. So I'll be here all day if I take this long. These are new ones, so I'll probably say less as we go because I've got quite a lot here. Next, Dessert. Another one I tried. One birthday, I decided I was going to just walk in a scent bar and walk out with something from Dessert. So I tried the whole line, and this one just immediately spoke to me. It was kind of nice because I didn't know the notes. It's just hard, and especially with the Japanese names, to remember what's what. So I walked in mostly blind and just went with my nose, and the one I chose was Kanami. Now Dessert's prices range wildly depending on the ingredients. They have as low as $100 for some that are more like citrus, or there's a minty one, there's a vetiver one, and there's kind of the mid-tier in the $200 to $300, and then they have ones that either have a small amount or a large amount of oud, including a famous one that's about $1,000 but contains a very rare, I think, Chiara oud. I did smell that while I was there, and it was indeed gorgeous. The one I chose turned out to be big on jasmine, and I think Dessert's jasmine is one of the most beautiful things I've ever smelled. But this just smells really complex and heady, like the other all natural. It doesn't last forever, but it's one of their mid-strength perfumes. So it lasts a decent while, but really beautiful, jasmine, floral. Let's smell the cap. I'm probably not gonna spray all these. It's just the jasmine is so beautiful. And it's funny, I didn't know what I was smelling, but I was just like, oh, this is like beautifully floral and like herbaceous and like complex. And it sold me on that. I've talked about this one before because I went through their discovery set, but the Patchouli from And Fragrance, I still love this. It's such a like fizzy Coca-Cola almost patchouli, but it turns out I tried the rest of the brand and the rest were kind of duds except for this one, but I'm still happy with this purchase. Speaking of duds, and this shows how a lot of the one-offs are kind of hasty decisions that are maybe regretted later. Also, I'm so sorry if you watch this, but probably the ugliest bottle in my collection. This is from, oh, now I'm blanking on her name. It's a collaboration with a designer, Bathsheba Hay, but it's made by Alia Raza. I remember all the details right now, except for the name. Let's look it up. Give me a second here. Regime des Fleurs. Oh my God. So she did a collab with this designer, which I have no aesthetic affinity with, Bathsheba Hay, but she had a little sample sale and I went there. And this was one of the things there that was for sale. I gotta say, prices weren't particularly good for a sample sale, but this one was quite nice when I tried it there. It has a really interesting sort of petrichor violet in the top and a vetiver dry down, but I kind of never wear it right now, and it almost disappears completely or becomes a skin scent within an hour. The vetiver hangs on when you put your nose into your arm, but I just don't think it's very well constructed. It's an interesting scent. If anybody wants this, I'll sell it to you. Another one while we're going down the semi-regrets path. Celle de Vetiver. I say semi because I do still think it's an extremely interesting fragrance, but I hardly ever wear this. And the last few times I wore it, I didn't particularly enjoy it. It's a good warm weather vetiver. Like it says, it is very salty. It also has this somewhat challenging, almost like chlorinated sharpness to it. I still find it quite interesting, but it's quite light wearing and there's not a lot to it. And I feel like maybe after several wears, it starts to kind of play out its trick. But I'll keep it for a little while, see how I feel about it. On to some extreme rarities. This one is from Six Sense, which I believe was the first perfume project of Joseph Cortana, who now has his own namesake brand. The concept, and I think it still exists, the concept was to work with smaller designers who did not have a perfume and to do a perfume with them. This one was for Damir Doma, another name I haven't said or thought about in ages, but it was a pretty cool designer back in the day. I think the guy's still around. His designs started getting pretty bad after a while, but and it's perfumed by Jan Vasnier. This one also is all natural. Weirdly, I don't have a thing for all naturals, but we're finding a lot here. And its focus is patchouli, with also a really interesting, lovely ginger opening. I don't imagine anyone will be able to find this. It's really nice though. It still smells great. Gosh, I don't even know how old this is, how long I've had this, but yeah, good one, interesting one, the Sixth Sense series. But on to another super rarity, Helmut Lang, the original Quiron. Now, I was a huge fan of Helmut back in the day. I was just getting into fashion kind of at the tail end of Helmut's career and the beginning of Eddie Slimane at Dior. I found this at an off Saks in Ohio and I bought two, so I still have the other bottle. So this is the original. I know they re-released some of the fragrances later. This is the original. I don't know how valuable this is. You can see I've used up most of it. I haven't worn it in a while, but basically it's sort of leather, but kind of like a faux leather and orange, which kind of reminds of like a orange scented leather cleaner, like a car interior leather cleaner. I would say it's interesting and it's good. Probably not worth like crazy, rarity prices, but it's a nice fragrance. I enjoy it and I'm glad to have it. I think that covers the super rarities. On to ones I've spoken of. Afternoon Swim, the only Vuitton I have. I think it's a good representative of the kind of happy, juicy, hyper real freshies that Vuitton does, but it's kind of a silly fragrance and the price is even more silly. Along the refreshing line, I've also mentioned this from Les Indémodables, Escalon Indonésie. Really love this as a cologne. It's herbaceous. It's got a salty mineralic ambergris accord. I'm gonna do a video soon. I've had a Les Indémodables sample set for like 4 years. And if it gives you a clue to how I feel about them, this is the only one I've bought. P.S. I like the brand, but none of them spoke to me enough to make a purchase. Another freshie that I just tried, the Xerjoss sample set, and this was the only one I really liked, was Neo. Not worth the retail, but readily available for much cheaper, and I think I'm happy with the price I paid. Kind of a happy, bright, neroli bergamot fragrance. It lists cardamom, so it has like a little bit of warm spices. It's very simple, but unlike other Xerjoff, it's not overly loud and not overly sweet or synthetic. It feels very like refined Italian, and for that I enjoy it. In the same vein, Off-White, again a brand that couldn't be further from my personal aesthetic, but I like Orange Blossom. This is a nice kind of musky ambroxany orange blossom perfume. Part of the reason for getting this was before buying Afternoon Swim, I had decided that Sun Song was going to be the Vuitton for me, just in time for it to be discontinued and it completely impossible to find. And then I smelled this and thought, gosh, that's quite a lot like Sun Song. And I believe Off-White's also under the Vuitton umbrella. I wouldn't say it's a one-to-one dupe, but it's a good stand-in. I've seen Sun Song going for crazy prices. I don't think anyone's paying these prices, but people are trying to charge them. Onto an oldie, and my only from DS and Durga is Cowboy Grass. I bought this one summer when I had very few perfumes still, and I remember this was kind of my perfume of that summer. Vetiver works really well to cut through nasty heat and humidity. And this, like the name implies, is sort of like a grassy, dry, bright vetiver. But I feel like most of this wear was from that summer, and I haven't really worn it that much since. But I should give this one another go. It's another one I did get from discounters. DS Durga prices, I think, while maybe in line with other niche brands, I think they're very expensive for what they are, but not so bad at a discount. Wow, we've got a lot. Moving on to Naomi Goodsir Bois d'Assaise. I've tried most from the line. I like the Iris Cendre quite a lot as well, but I found that one goes a little bitter cigarette ash, whereas this is like boozy, warm campfire smoke. It's really beautiful, and it also works really beautifully in warm weather. It really comes alive and once again cuts through the heat with that kind of dry smokiness. But it's got like a really cozy warmth to it as well, and that kind of boozy note. What's her crazy green one? I tried that one, and I think it gave me an allergic reaction, but if it didn't, I would buy that one. There's that crazy green tuberose one. There's a leather one I didn't really care for, a little smoked meaty for me, but it's a really interesting and good brand. Moving on, Iris Nazarena from Edis de Venustus. I have the good fortune of living just outside New York City, so I can visit the shop itself. And I tried this. It was also a birthday gift to myself one birthday. I decided I would go try the line and buy my favorite, and this delivered. Yeah, it's a really kind of rooty juniper iris, also good for all weather because the juniper brightness and the dryness of it makes it work quite nicely in warm weather as well as cold. This one's been talked about a lot. I gotta say, most of the other fragrances from their line did not impress me. I got samples of several, and they felt a little thin and airy, which here I think the thin airiness is welcome with Iris, which could potentially be like gloopy or heavy, because this also has this airy, powdery dryness to the Iris that's also brightened up by juniper. So really beautiful composition. On to Amouage. This is a funny story. Incense Rory. I've tried many Amouage because since I first got into perfume, it's always been a brand that's very highly spoken of, and they never ever spoke to me. I don't like the style of Chong's era. I find them way overly complex, too many things going on, messy, off-putting, too strong. I feel like as much heresy as it is, Renaud Simon's tenure has been more successful in terms of at least catering to my taste, but oftentimes there's just too much powerful, obnoxious amberwood in the base. But I had tried this at Bergdorf before buying, and again came up for quite a steal of a price. I got it and I opened it, and the plunger quickly fell into the bottle. And I wasn't sure, is this supposed to happen? How does this work? Because then it becomes much easier to remove the stopper. And I read up, no, obviously that's not supposed to happen. And I thought, for something so expensive per ml, I don't want to waste any ml fishing this out. So I contacted where I bought it from, and they very kindly replaced it for me because it was the very first time I opened it, this happened. And I've been afraid to reopen it ever since. So they recently opened a boutique in a mall in New Jersey. American Dream Mall has the first United States Amouage boutique, and I visited there and I told them my story and asked if they would help me, and they said, yes, certainly, bring it in, we'll open it for you, but I just haven't made it back yet. And it's summer, so I haven't really felt like wearing this, although again, I think incense can go well in summer, but I got a few wears out of that broken bottle before sending it back. So definitely need to revisit the mall and get a professional to open this for me. But it's really shameful, such an expensive product having really faulty packaging. Pretty much everyone who owns this agrees that the packaging does not work. 3 more left. Rose de May from Paris Monte Carlo. This brand came onto my radar when I read about the series where Jean-Claude Elena created 3 flowers that reminded him of I think his youth and of grass. So there's a rose, there's a jasmine, and there's a bergamot, I suppose materials, not flowers. I had and sold the jasmine because I found it a bit linear, and it was just a little boring and just kind of kept doing the same thing forever. The rose is quite beautiful, although once again, I can say I don't wear it all that often because it's not all that different from some other roses I already have, such as Rose Tonnerre, which I think I like a little bit better, and Gucci Rose. One interesting thing about this is they claim to have inverted the pyramid, and I did find that to be true, where it starts heavy, almost like a base, and it lightens up and kind of gets fresher as it goes. So that's very interesting about it. It's also an interesting brand. Most things I've tried from this brand have been good, but not quite exciting enough to kind of pull my attention when I already have so many other things. One last small one, Adorum from Ney. Mr. Persiles probably sold hundreds of bottles of this when he just raved about this perfume, and it doesn't hurt that it's quite affordable. I don't remember, $30, $40 for 15 ml. So I picked it up. I have to be honest, I like it, but I don't love it. To me, again, it's just a little bit of like a simple frankincense perfume. I feel like I've smelled something like this before. Happy to have it at the price, but I wouldn't, feel bad if you missed out on it. It's not all that special to me, although I do like it, and I have seen others who have completely raved about it. And finally, the weirdo, and I was shocked to find this when I'm going through what I only have one of. I only have one Comme des Garçons. The reason I'm shocked is I think of Comme des Garçons as being a seminal brand in my early interest in perfume. I wore fully through an entire bottle of Wonderwood. It was kind of a signature scent for a while before I really went down the rabbit hole. And I guess I've thought about buying a lot more Comme than I ever actually have. But this one is extremely interesting. I believe the official name was just simply Eau de Parfum. Some people call it Untitled or Tape, because the concept is that it smells a bit like packing tape. But what's so interesting is it's actually, I think I said this in another video, just like Jean-Claude Ellena creates the illusion of smooth leather in his Hermes leather perfume. This one creates the illusion of tape, maybe there is a real tape accord, through this similar white florals, kind of heliotrope. So yeah, it's kind of this fresh, almost like, heliotrope-y, white, gauzy smell that does smell a little bit industrial, but it's really addictive, the way that sometimes nastier industrial smells, can be addictive. This is, and I actually have 2 bottles of this, which is really silly because I thought they had discontinued it and I saw it super marked down, and I thought, why not get another bottle? But it's kind of funny to have a backup of such a crazy perfume. But I really enjoy it and actually find it very wearable, which might come as a surprise given the weirdness of it. Anyway, I feel like my memory is going because I was trying to think of L'Eau d'Hiver when I was thinking of other things this reminds me of. So yeah, it has that cool mineralic kind of white mimosa heliotrope scents that L'Eau d'Hiver does, but they definitely don't smell the same at all. So that's it. These are a whole load of perfumes, of which I only have one from the house, and I think many of these I've never spoken about on the channel before. Hope you enjoyed.